5 years of doing sports radio this week as the Orioles head north of the border to take on the Toronto Blue Jays and then to New York this weekend. We will spin the dial and see if we're alive for wild card activity next Tuesday, but I am holding my calendar. This Wednesday night will be at Greenmount Station swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry with two young Ravens, Alex Lewis and Ryan Jensen from the offensive line. We hope to see your face in the place for that. As all hands on deck for the undefeated Baltimore Ravens taking on the Oakland Raiders on Sundays. Jack Del Rio brings Derek Carr and Khalil Mack and the 2-1 Raiders west to east after a victory in Nashville on Sunday. Here to talk all things silver and black, he is one senior writer for the Silver and Black Illustrated, living in the Bay Area, and a defending champion here at WNST, a returning champion. We welcome Michael Wagaman back on, longtime AP freelancer in the Bay Area, as well as covering all things Raiders. And you can follow him at MWagaman, that's WAGAMAN, out in the Bay Area. Dude, not a bad start. Here in Baltimore, 3-0 is pretty heady. We don't get to 3-0 much in our 21 years, and certainly the Raiders have come across tough times over the last decade and a half. 2-1 is a real nice sort of leaping off point for Jack Del Rio and the Raiders, is it not, Mike?
Absolutely. And when you look at it, this team could very easily be 0-3. There's been a lot of breaks that have gone their way, but I think they feel pretty good about themselves. What did Jack Del Rio say after the game last night? There's no such thing as an ugly win in this league, and I'm sure the Baltimore Ravens would agree to that. I see these teams, very, very similar. They both, have got through these first 3 weeks feeling pretty good about themselves. The Ravens obviously 3-0, and I don't think anybody expected that. But I think John Harbaugh and Jack Del Rio would both agree that there's plenty of room for improvement on both teams, and offensively and defensively as far as the Raiders go. But you only have 16 games, and you can get a win any way you can get it. You'll take it, and it's a far more interesting matchup than maybe I first thought it might be at the start of the year.
Well, both of these teams with 2 road victories now, that really bodes well
huge.
Because it's the hardest thing to do. And even winning in Tennessee, we put that game tape on. What are we going to see here this week? Because obviously I was down in Jacksonville watching the Ravens, scuffle and struggle, but in the end pull it out. Obviously it was the same sort of effort from the Raiders over the Titans on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when you look at the Oakland Raiders, you see a tale of 2 distinctly different teams. And by that, I mean, you look at their offense, and it's a very explosive offense. Number 1 ranked in the NFL. You see a quarterback in Derek Carr, who is an emerging star. He looks just so comfortable. He's in his 3rd year. This is the first time he's had, the same offensive coordinator for consecutive seasons since he came into the NFL. And you're seeing a guy who just really is so comfortable with that offense. He's comfortable throwing on the run. He's comfortable staying in the pocket, taking a hit and delivering that throw. He's got the weapons around him in Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree, and a running back by committee that I think is surprising some teams with how effective they're being. Defensively, they played better yesterday, but they still gave up more than 350 yards, and they've given up more yards in 3 games than any team, I believe, in NFL history. So they improved yesterday on defense. They pitched a shutout in the second half when the offense didn't score, and that was huge. And you can't discount that fact, but there's still a lot of question marks with that defense, especially up front. Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin have yet to make a definitive impact on this defense, and there's a number of reasons for that. But again, they were able to come out of there against, I think, a tough Tennessee team, and they were able to get the win by shutting the Titans down in the second half, and that bodes well. They saw improvement, but again, like I was talking about earlier, at least on defense, there's so much more room for improvement, and unless they do, I don't think the Raiders are good enough offensively. They have the number 1 offense, but I don't think that offense is good enough to constantly, week after week, get into shootouts. And so for the Raiders' sake, they have to make significant strides over the next month defensively to really be considered a serious contender.
Well, let's talk about the positives here for the Raiders. Running the football is something a lot of teams talk about it. We're committed to the run. Running will open up things for our quarterback and our incredible passing attack. And then then you try to run, and then you try to, and then another team stacks the box, and you can't run. What has made this Raiders running game so effective? And obviously, Kelechi Osemele left our Purple Roost here to go out there to be a part of that through 3 weeks. And look, I am not going to say the Saints and certainly not the Falcons and the Titans are top defensive units, especially on the run stop. But the Raiders have been effective in all 3 of these games at getting first downs on the ground and not having to have Carr throw the ball so much.
Yeah, and that's huge. This is a passing league now, and we've seen the evolution over the past decade. But I still believe that you have to run the ball effectively, and especially in the Raiders' case, because teams know that Derek Carr is going to throw the ball, the Raiders have to be able to run it effectively, and they've been able to do that for the most part for the first 3 weeks. Now, there's 2 kind of factors that play into this. You mentioned Kelechi Osemele coming out here and signing. That's huge. They pair him with Donald Penn on the left side of that line. You have Rodney Hudson, the center. From the center on over to the left, they're as solid as any offensive line in the NFL. And I think offensively, all the way around, their offensive line has got to be a top 5 unit. But the other thing is the fact that they are going with a by-committee approach. Latavius Murray was a 1,000-yard back last year, second in the AFC, 6th in the NFL, but there were a lot of question marks, and that was because the running game really suffered when Latavius came out. The Raiders went out and drafted DeAndre Washington this year. They picked up a gem in Jalen Richard, a guy who went undrafted, and they've really been mixing and matching those 3 very, very effectively. You saw Jalen Richard get the 75-yard touchdown run on his first NFL carry against the Saints. This last week against the Titans, DeAndre Washington on back-to-back carries goes 30 yards and then 14 yards. And again, these are the backups to Latavius Murray, who has really been able to excel. As a result, you're seeing him rip off 5- and 6-yard runs at a chunk, real powerful, violent runs, something that teams kind of questioned. And I think we all questioned about Latavius, whether or not he could stay healthy and be a bruising kind of running back. And you're seeing him make those kind of runs this year. So I think just the combination of the 3 working together, along with the upgraded offensive line, have really, come forth to put this running game together. And then the other factor is that they're so good passing the ball that as linebackers, you really and safeties, you have to play the pass more as a first option than you do a run. Most times you look to stop the run, you think run first, then drop back. But in this case, I think against the Raiders, you almost have to think pass first, and then try to defend the run.
Boy, Crabtree has had a whole second life across the bay, correct? I mean, especially after, not always, being the number 1 guy or being well looked after in San Francisco, to cross over. And the Amari Cooper thing, I mean, obviously, we remember the day he was drafted, coming off the board high, and, we had Perryman, and we're still waiting for young players to make it happen. It feels like Cooper's really starting to emerge here now.
Yeah, he made tremendous leaps from last year. He led the NFL, I believe, in drop passes last year, which was kind of similar. People forget that Jerry Rice, who many people consider the greatest receiver of all time, had an amazing amount of drops his first year in the league. So to see Amari take the step that he did from last year to this year, he and Derek Carr spent an awful lot of time in the offseason together. They both approached the coaching staff before training camp and said they wanted to be paired as roommates so they could continue to build on that relationship. And you're seeing that. Derek Carr is putting the ball right where Amari wants it, only where Amari can catch it. And Amari is just really leaps and bounds, head and shoulders above a lot of the defensive backs that he's facing. And then the flip side of that is you have Michael Crabtree on the other side, who definitely, as you point out, has been reborn since he came to Oakland. And there were a lot of factors that went into his lack of production in San Francisco, and a lot of it was on Michael. He was unhappy, he brooded a lot. I think he came in with a chip on his shoulder and never really found a comfort zone in San Francisco. And that's changed, obviously, since he came to Oakland. He and Carr, again, formed a quick, fast bond. And I think, as much as we all talk about the AC/DC connection, Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, Derek Carr relies an awful lot on Michael Crabtree. You'll see him throw to Crabtree in traffic. You'll see him, that's his first read a lot of times, even though it might not be in the play. He's looking wherever Michael Crabtree is, and You saw that in the New Orleans game, Crabtree came down with the key 2-point conversion, and there were some big catches by him yesterday. I think at one point, 8 of his 10 catches had gone for first downs or touchdowns. So the two of them have really, really stepped in and given Derek Carr the weapons that he didn't have as a rookie year. And you throw in the mix the slot guy, Seth Roberts, who caught the game-winning touchdown against Baltimore last year, I believe it was, and who came back after a drop pass yesterday and had a key touchdown reception. So the receiving core of the Raiders vastly upgraded than it was, better than it was even 2 years ago, and Derek Carr has benefited from it for sure.
Well, we saw Oakland last year, and it was a long flight home after that loss in Week 2. Mike Wagaman joining us here. He is M. Wagaman. That's Wagaman, sports reporter living in the Bay Area for the Associated Press, and also senior writer for the Silver and Black Illustrated. You can follow his journey out on Twitter as the Raiders come to town this week. To the defensive side of the ball, clearly the pass rush is not there at this point, and, I guess thankful that you're taking on a youthful Marcus Mariota on Sunday afternoon. It won't be that way this week. I mean, the Ravens have certainly dialed it up a little bit offensively, getting Pitt and Smith back out there, running around. You talk about a resurgent career. Mike Wallace trying to do that in a Ravens uniform, much like Crabtree making that move. Wallace now on his 4th team, and being very, very effective, by the way, and then trying to make room for Perryman and Kamar Aiken and these other receivers. This sounds a little dreamy for the Ravens to be taking on a defense that's really had trouble getting after the quarterback.
No, absolutely. And not only have the Raiders had trouble getting after the quarterback, they've had a lot of trouble covering the receivers as a result. You saw Sean Smith get benched in Week 1 because he was having so much trouble against the Saints. And, now you're looking at the fact that the Raiders had significant problems against Drew Brees and Matt Ryan. And Marcus Mariota this last week was obviously a young guy, second-year quarterback, and he made a costly turnover that the Raiders were able to convert on. So, now they get a guy like Joe Flacco coming in, another veteran guy, another guy who's seen a lot of defenses, who's been around. You're not going to fool, and he's going to find a weakness in that defense. And once he does, he's going to exploit it. The Raiders have had a real tough time covering the tight ends this year. They've had a real tough time covering receivers. The last 2 games, receivers have gotten so ridiculously wide open. It's scary.
Well, I love when you talk dirty on Baltimore radio like that. That's beautiful. That's what every Raven fan wants to hear here this week is free runners. Don't guard Dennis Pitta. Just let him run out there. He'll catch 9 this week.
Exactly. I mean, and the Raiders, they made changes on their defense against Tennessee as a result. They moved their first-round pick, Carl Joseph, into the starting lineup. Their 6th-round pick, Corey Joseph, started at middle linebacker after Ben Heaney, who started the first 2 games, was just absolutely torched. So they've made some changes. They seem to improve against the Titans, but again, facing the Titans, defending the Titans, and a young quarterback like Marcus Mariota, who I still think is going to be a really solid quarterback in this league, but he hasn't been around as long as Joe Flacco. He hasn't got the experience that Flacco has, and I just think that unless the Raiders are able to generate some kind of pass rush, we're going to see a lot of what we saw in Weeks 1 and Weeks 2 with this defense. And, the big issue for the Raiders, as you mentioned, is the pass rush or lack thereof. And what teams have done effectively against Khalil Mack in particular is they're just keeping a running back or a tight end in, and they'll just give him an extra little chip block. And he just has not put any pressure on the quarterback. I think he's gotten to the quarterback to hit him, no sacks, but I think he's gotten to the quarterback maybe once or twice so far this year. And that they're not getting the push up the middle where you would want to get the push. If your outside edge rushers are getting chipped and double teamed, you've got to get something in the interior, and they're not getting that. And their linebackers, opposing offensive linemen are getting to that second level and taking the linebackers out. And like I said, teams are able to exploit this defense right now. It's funny, like I said, the Raiders talked so much about yesterday, hey, we improved on defense. Yeah, but you still gave up 360-something yards. And if you give up 360 yards, just say an average of the first 3 games or over any span, you're concerned as a defense, and this team is giving up way more than that. That was an improvement for them. So they've got issues. I think it's going to probably be another game where both teams end up kind of like last year, scoring in the high 20s or low 30s, and it's probably not going to be a game that's decided until midway or late in the fourth quarter.
The Ravens would like to tell you their defense has become more stout. We shall see how they cover 2 top 10 draft picks this weekend as Crabtree and Amari Cooper come to town with Jack Del Rio and the Raiders. Mike Wagaman joining us here from the Bay Area and the Silver and Black Illustrated as well. You can follow him at MWagaman out on Twitter. Last but not least, that division looks to be a lot better than maybe advertised, and I'm not ready to write the Chargers off as a bad team. I think the Raiders are a plus team. Certainly the Chiefs have come out, fighting here at this point and look to be stout defensively, especially against the Jets over the weekend and taking the ball away. And the Broncos have been the most unlikely 3-0 team just because of who they've played, where they've played, and who they've played with this quarterback, this young quarterback play, whether it's Carson Wentz or Dak Prescott. But certainly for the Broncos, I don't think anybody expected them to be perfect thus far.
No, and there were a lot. Remember, the Broncos were basically penciling Mark Sanchez in to be that quarterback when they signed him. And Trevor Siemian kind of came up out of nowhere. He passed Paxton Lynch on the depth chart and just has played well. He hasn't played great, but with that team, you don't need your quarterback to play great. You've got decent enough receivers. You've got a solid enough running game with C.J. Anderson. And then you've got arguably the best defense in the league. And that defense has not changed much. You've actually seen Aqib Talib play a lot better. DeMarcus Ware is not 100%. But they're still doing the things that they need to do to win. I'm not completely surprised that they're 3-0. I'm a little shocked that they've looked as good as they have offensively. But yeah, it's the old saying, hey, to beat the champ, you got it. To be the champ, you got to beat the champ. And they're proving that right now. Kansas City, much improved team, very solid. They're going to be in the playoff hunt. They will be a playoff team, in my opinion. The Raiders, as we talked about, they've got to make some adjustments. They've got to fix some things in a hurry to really stay in that hunt. And the Chargers, they've been bit by the injury bug. Manti Te'o's now out for the year, it looks like. Losing Keenan Allen was a big blow, and yet they're still in there. They're plugging away. So I think that they'll at least have something to do with the division in terms of who wins it, simply because they play every team twice, and I expect they'll probably knock one of those teams off at some point. Yeah, definitely an improved AFC West. It's not going to be easy for Denver to win it as easily as it was last year, but it would not surprise me to see 2 and possibly 3 teams come out of this division and go into the playoffs. It's possible they could get, a couple wild cards. I know it's early, but the way you look at the way things are shaping up around the AFC, this division is as good as anything, and these teams, as long as they continue to make progress, they're going to be right there.
Giants have a chance to get in this tournament, make some noise. I mean, we're sitting out here in Baltimore trying to fight and scratch and claw to get to play some baseball next Tuesday. Boy, the Giants, I have not seen a fade quite like this, especially from Bruce Bochy team, right?
No, this will go down as if they don't get in, it will go down as unequivocally the biggest collapse in sports history, in all of sports. You go into the All-Star break with the best record in baseball, an 8-game lead, and since then you've got the worst record in baseball. The Dodgers just clinched the division. Right now the Giants are clinging. They've got a half-game lead, I believe it is, over the Cardinals heading into the final week of the season. And even if they should sneak in, it's an even year, and that's what I keep carrying around here about from Giants fan. Hey, it's an even year, and that's all we got to do is get in. But this team is not built to go very far in the playoffs. I think the Orioles are definitely built to go far in the playoffs. But I just don't see that from this team. And it's strange because it is a Bruce Bochy managed team. And to me, he's one of the best, if not the best in the game right now. And it just seems like since that second half, here's a guy in Bochy who everything he touched turned to gold in 2010, 2012, 2014. And since the All-Star break, it just doesn't matter what buttons he's pushing. It's just not working. When they get the pitching, they're not getting the hitting. When they're getting the hitting, they're not getting the pitching. They just can't put it all together. So I won't be surprised if they get in, considering the way that the Cardinals have been playing down the stretch, but it wouldn't be a surprise to me whatsoever if come the end of the season, the Giants are on the outside looking in.
Mike Wagaman covering all things Silver and Black at the Silver and Black Illustrated, as well as Bay Area sports through the Associated Press. And his work sometimes shows up at WNST.net on our Associated Press wire. You can follow him out on Twitter at MWagaman. That's WAGAMAN. And has a lot. Is that what player is that on the front of your Twitter?
Coco Crisp.
I thought that was Coco Crisp. I don't remember him having the Oscar Gamble do, though. But that's a great. That is a great.
I love the Oscar Gamble reference. We had talked about that. That was the guy who could just barely. He wouldn't even put the cap, his baseball cap down. He would just kind of set it on his afro. It was beautiful. Coco picked out his hair. Probably usually keeps it short and braided up. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. He picked it out, and I just had to go with it. I love it. I think it's tremendous.
Well, it's a Kaepernick has the look now too, right? So he
does absolutely. I figure with all the heat around that guy right now, that's the last picture I'm going to put up.
I don't remember Coco pulling the hair out, but I mean, it looked. I was going to say that was Coco Crisp, but I didn't want to insult, him or Fruity Pebbles, quite frankly. So, hey, Mike, great coming on, man. I appreciate the time as always, and we'll see you on Sunday when the Raiders and the Ravens renew that 2001 AFC Championship game. Hey, Del Rio was on our side of the fence. So was Woodson in that one. So, long memories.
That's right. It's like old home. It'll be old home week.
I like to bring that up anytime I see Gruden. Great having you on, Mike.
All right, you have a good one, my friend.
You got it. I'm making my Chucky face on the internet right now. Or something like that. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. East Bay, West Bay, Alameda, San Francisco, wherever you happen to be. The Raiders are going to be in this week. The Orioles are going to be up in Toronto. They're going to be in New York. We're going to be following all of it. And if there is any breaking news, it'll come to you first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here driving you home on Thursday, getting you ready for Thursday night football, as well as a weekend of baseball and the undefeated Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. Anything you need in the sports world comes directly to your email inbox at 7 a.m. every morning, but you got to sign up for the WNST morning newspaper first. That's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Reminder, Wednesday night, we're back in Carroll County, Hampstead, Greenmount Station with Alex Lewis and Ryan Jensen of the Baltimore Ravens. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry and for There Goes My Hero. And you can find us up there right around 7:30. I'll be the guy with 3 crab cakes because 2 is just not enough. And I've been out of town, and they don't give me that sort of thing in Jacksonville. So I'm going to Greenmount Station for that. It's going to be a big week around here. Social media will be abuzz. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me anytime, anywhere. And, of course, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.